Excellent. Excellent. Moving forward on to thing number three, pivoting a little bit, we're going to the FOMC meeting. Gary, break it down for us. What's the FOMC?
That stands for the Federal Reserve Open Market Committee. They met on July 31st, their July meeting. Um, Chairman Powell, he softened the language, or the committee rather softened the language in the press release. Um, Previously they've talked a lot about we will not lower rates until we get inflation down to 2%. That's been softened now to where they're saying until inflation is heading toward 2%. They did that a couple of months ago. And the whole point of that one is they're signaling that they would be willing to lower rates before inflation hits 2%. The other key aspect of the press release, the big change, was there was a reference to the Fed's dual mandate. Now, for people who aren't, constant Fed watchers, we're going to explain that. First of all, the real mandate of the Fed is stable prices. That's 0% inflation. But no government agency or quasi-government agency ever sticks with just their mandate. And so that's been reinterpreted. One is to, instead of stable prices, to have price increases or inflation of around 2%, which is 2% too high, but that's where we're heading. The other aspect of the dual mandate is full employment. And so, what Powell and the Fed are realizing with unemployment starting to go up is there is an issue where, our current interest rates, which I don't think the current Fed funds rate is high, but it's higher than where it had been. There's a sense that if they lower it, we'll get more people back to work. And so, the question is, do we want full employment and high inflation? Or do we want to have, some additional people unemployed, but have lower inflation? And these are the trade-offs that the Fed has to weigh. But for the first time in years, the Fed started to talk about the dual mandate in the press release. And then, Powell got up in front of the audience. And again, to go back to what we were talking about before, flat out said, we are looking at possible rate cuts starting in September. And so, we've changed our view. We've spent 2+ years, almost 3 years now, saying higher for longer. We've been right on that. I remember people started calling for rate cuts in like May or June of
Mhm.
22. So they've been wrong for 2 years, and we've said higher for longer for 2 years. That is no longer the line around here. We are, for now, retiring higher for longer, and it's going to be rate cuts are coming sooner rather than later. So sooner rather than later is the new tagline on this, until we get a resurgence of inflation, at which point we'll be back on team higher for longer. Again, for the people who don't like that, our job is to make money. We will absolutely switch our opinion every time changing our opinion allows us to make money.
It does not ring a bell the way higher for longer does, but maybe it'll grow on me.
We're gonna have
We'll
to
see.
workshop it.
Yeah, we'll see in the coming days. But Gary, probably looking at 25 basis point cut in September. You're marking it as probable. What exactly does that do? What does that change?
So big picture, it changes absolutely nothing. Whether the Fed funds rate is, 5.25 to 5.5, depending on, which aspect of it you're looking at. If they change it to, 5 by 5.25, I don't think that's going to materially affect the economy. The issue is it's signaling, right? The probability that the Fed cuts once and says, okay, great, we cut, we gave you lower rates, we're done, let's go home. I think that's very, very unlikely. Typically, when they start to hike, there's a hiking cycle. When they start to cut, there's a cutting cycle. So I think, it's not that the 25 basis points is a lot. It's that it signals we're so concerned about the economy that despite the fact that the CPI is around 3%, we're going to cut now-ish. So I think that's the thing, that people are focused on and should be focused on for that.